Hello and welcome. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to LFG Live. We did close out last month's January's LFG Live with Foundations and Clarity. Some great sessions there. You can check them out if you didn't see them live, recorded on my YouTube channel. This month, we are talking about People and Leadership series. The first step in people, process, profit for a reason is people. So we're going to talk a little bit about people and leadership and what that looks like to us this month. First, as usual, what tea am I drinking today? So today I do have a chili chai tea from Whittard of Chelsea. What's fun about this one is I was actually introduced to Whittard of Chelsea on a trip with a couple of my friends to London, probably 7 years ago or so. We planned this trip completely around actually getting tickets in the lottery for the Harry Potter play when that came out. So a group of us girls went out there, of course, before children. And before leaving London, we were like, we have to go to a tea shop. It just seems silly not to, and we did. And I brought home a few, and I have been absolutely hooked to Whittard of Chelsea ever since. So probably for anybody who knows me, I'm not a very fancy or bougie person. This is probably the bougiest thing I do is order some of my teas from there, but absolutely delicious chili chai. Check it out. All right, so let's talk about what we're here today for, which is people first leadership and what that really means. I hear a lot of conversations about this, which is a good thing. I see that as a great thing. People are actually focused on people first leadership. But what I start to see then is it go into these tangents of what it doesn't mean and people utilizing it incorrectly or not believing in it because they don't know what it truly is. When I think about my style of leadership, it is absolutely people first. It is that org chart flipped on its side or flipped upside down and saying, Daria, what can Daria do for the teams? How can I support them? How can I remove obstacles? How can I provide tools to make sure the team is being successful? Because if they're successful, I am. But what don't people believe about people first? So one of the things I heard very recently was that people first leadership was about just constantly being nice. It was you had to be nice to your teams all the time. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be happy. You avoided accountability. You didn't have tough conversations. You kind of bent over backwards for the employees, even if it was at the detriment of yourself or the organization. It was about turning the business into just talking about feelings instead of actionable items. And when I hear all this, it makes me cringe because that is absolutely not what people first means. What it absolutely means is that every business is people. That is what it is made up of. So when we focus on our people first, that's when we can implement processes and then get to profit. So it is designing the organization in a way that the people can win, right? Um, I talked about it in some of our foundations and clarity last month. It is making sure that we're creating clarity for our teams, making sure people don't have to guess of what right looks like. It's really sitting down at the end of the day and saying, is my team sure of what the goals are? And are they sure of what my expectations are? That is making sure that the people are considered first, not just the process, right? In that example, if I didn't care about the people and I just saw the outcome not getting somewhere, well, I'd be angry with the people, right? They didn't get there. They didn't do it right. Well, let's say I fire that person and I hire somebody new. And again, I give incorrect clarity or incorrect goals or guidelines. Well, I fire that person again. We all know how much it costs to onboard somebody and how that ramp up, what that costs us and just circle. Just treat the people right the first time and give them their proper clarity, right? Another big one that I see is folks that are letting their high performers kind of get away with murder. And I tell this story very, very, very often when I talk about this point in people first leadership is we had a store out in our one of our districts and very, very busy district. And this was the number one store in the district, the number one employee in the district I wanted to let go. So I go to the district manager and I say to him, we really should let this employee go. There's a lot of complaints. There's a lot of lateness issues, teamwork issues. Honestly, nobody likes working with this person because what happens then is everybody else thinks what this person is doing is okay. Oh, I'm not sure. I said, well, I really would prefer to let them go. They're really not living up to the expectations of our organization. And I said, but the way I see this is because this one person is creating such a bad work environment for everybody, I promise you, person, the rest of the team is actually going to do better. And for 1 month, should it dip because of this particular termination? But I'm pretty confident somebody else is going to outperform what they were doing before. Sure enough, let go of the top performer, the store actually did better. So making sure that we're not just letting top performers do what they want, that we're engaging and celebrating top performers when they're doing the right thing, though. What some of the other things that we need to do is building a culture where performance and respect coexist, right? I've talked to some people in sales organizations that did not have a sales structure in place, meaning they didn't have a commission structure, they didn't have a bonus, they didn't have KPIs, they didn't have a scorecard. And when I asked why, their answer back to me was, well, we have such a great culture, such a great environment that I really didn't want to do that because I thought people would get too competitive and then they would get mean with each other, right? They wouldn't get along. And I said, we can actually do both. We can figure out a way to keep that amazing culture that you have, but also have some sales expectations. Give them goals. Salespeople love goals. They love to chase something. So we were actually able to accomplish that. So a lot of different things that we could differentiate between what people first is and isn't. Hopefully that gave you a good snapshot. Certainly, if you wanted me to evaluate your company, that's part of what we're here for, right? To educate, but also to offer more services. Please reach out to me. Phone number here is 732-508-0580 or visit us at LeMayFusionGroup.com. We can certainly do a deep dive in your organization to see how your people first or your people engagement is going. But a big kind of tagline to remember when we talk about this is people first is not the opposite of profit first. It's not forsaking making money in a company just to keep our people happy. That's not what it is about. It is making sure that the people are a driver of that profit, making sure that we're giving them the tools that they need and creating a good environment for people. They're going to work harder when they know that you are there for them and that you're going to support them in what they need. And as we know, we talked about in some of the sessions last month, this chaos is expensive. Clarity starts to cost some money, right? Because it takes more time, it takes more resources, it takes more energy on fixing that chaos versus moving the business forward. So when we bring this back to the LeMay Fusion Group framework of people, process, profit, right? When we talk about people, which is our first of those P's, is making sure we have the right people in the right seats. So if we're looking at a people first environment, it's making sure people are in a role that they can succeed. And I've seen people do this before, that a role opens up, especially if it's a little higher pay. They take an amazing employee and put them in that role because they like them, because they're really good at what they do. It doesn't mean that next position is the right seat for them. I've had that happen in the past as well, where we moved somebody into a leadership position before they were ready. I've actually seen it dozens of times, and they just weren't ready and they failed. And that's not what we want to see. So I'm going to say that over and over again. Coaching and feedback. Accountability is not negative. Accountability is not negativity. Accountability means I believe in you and I believe in what you can do. I believe in what you can do for yourself and what you can do for the company. So holding people accountable through those coaching conversations is going to mean the world. And then, of course, next up is creating the processes that the team needs in order to be profitable. So I always say my leadership view is removing obstacles and providing tools. And that's where that process comes in. So spend time talking to your teams. What do they need? Now, you can't promise them everything, right? If they tell you, I need this $500,000 machine to work a little faster, but it's only going to give me this much of a return on investment, we're not going to go out and buy a $500,000 machine, right? But you'd be surprised how many times I hear simple things like, I didn't have, that's not expensive, and that's a traditional business expense, right? Or, I would really be able to do my job twice as fast if I had multiple monitors. If you could see where I'm sitting right now, I actually have 3 giant monitors across, it's bigger than my wingspan right now because it's easier for me to work. And I've been able to spend $50 on a new monitor and double that person's output just by listening to them and making sure that the processes we put in place are repeatable, right? So making sure that we're giving them tools, removing obstacles, seeing what they need to be successful. And then the last, of course, that's going to bring us to our profitability. Our employees are going to be on board, motivated, clear expectations, all the tools that they need, obstacles removed. And that's what people first is about. Not just fluff and giving them whatever they want and, looking at them before you look at the company. The organization has to sustain because you have a lot of employees, any employees that you have to make sure that the company sustains for. We can't, do something for one employee that's going to harm the organization by any means. So what do I run into the most when I'm looking at people first, now that we've talked about all the ways that people first can really be implemented in a business? And one is the nice boss. The really nice boss. And those are the hard ones, right? Because you meet somebody and they're so great and they're so caring and they love everybody and they'll tell you, I'm absolutely people first. I love my people. They love me. They're like family. But that super nice boss often avoids those accountability conversations. That's not people first. That's people pleasing. People first is sometimes having those tough conversations. It's people first is saying, I care enough about you to be transparent. Right. And I always give the very dumbed down example of my son, Aaron, loves baseball. And if I were to go to his game or his practice and see him swing, and let's say it's a horrible, terrible swing, and me and the coach just go, well, that was rough, and walk away. It's not going to help them, right? That's not how coaches do things. And that's not how parents do things when they see their kids struggling, right? Why do we do that in business? That same scenario, if I see Aaron swinging funny, or is holding his hands upside down, or holding the bat weird, I'm going to coach him on it. And my coaching isn't to be negative. My coaching is to make sure he can hit the ball the way he wants to hit the ball. He wants to hit that next home run. We have to do that same thing in business. Can't just be people pleasers. We have to be clear with our teams. We can't avoid the hard conversations. Another thing on this too is if you have an employee and throughout the entire year, you only have one conversation with them about how they're doing. One. That one conversation is startling. I'll tell you that. It's, oh, shit. This person never talks to me about how I'm doing. I must be in trouble, right? Well, think about the opposite. Continuously having performance conversations, not negative conversations about performance, but just performance in general. They start to thrive on that. They crave that. And when you have the opportunity feedback that's mixed in with the positivity feedback, they don't take it hard. They take it as, oh, shit, I just need to improve this. I need to get a little bit better here. I had that in one of the organizations I worked with in a customer service and call center, where I used to give them feedback once a week on their calls with customers. And the one week I got super busy and I just didn't get to it. And the following week, the team actually was like, hey, Dee, where's our feedback? And I'm always very transparent. I said, wow, I thought you guys would think it was kind of a nice thing that I skipped it this week. You didn't have to hear me kind of talk about your opportunities. And they said, no, every single time you give us this feedback, we do better and we make more money. So why on earth wouldn't we want it? Well, you can't just plug and play that. That was me building that trust and that rapport with them because I have consistent performance conversations with them. And they genuinely trusted and know that I was doing that to help them be better, not to beat them down. That's a huge difference there, right? So make sure we don't fall into the nice boss trap, consistent feedback, and make sure that in that people first example, it's I care enough about you to be clear with you, right? Another is scaling without losing culture, right? And when we grow a business, and when I talk about scaling and growing business, that could mean from one location to 100. That could mean keeping your 5 locations, but increasing your product mix. That can mean having the same amount of locations, just increasing how many clients or customers you take on, whatever it might be. That's all scaling to me. But it doesn't scale through, a Friday pizza party. We see memes on social media all the time for that, or just a couple of posters. Culture scales through, excuse me, what you tolerate, what you reward, and what you repeat. And I actually got stuck in this not too long ago. We had at the last company I worked with 2 companies ago, we had somebody come on board that I had worked with for years in the past, absolutely fantastic sales leader. And I'm giving him an update on one of the employees who I'm having some trouble with some of his performance, some of just the way he was engaging in the store. And I was like, last time I talked to him, I told him, if you do this one more time, I'm going to have to let you go. And he just looked at me and went, you just gave him permission to do it again. Shoot, you're right. I did. I didn't hold him accountable enough for the severity of what he had done. So what you tolerate creates that culture, right? Going back to one of my original stories today, that employee who was consistently late, that's creating a culture because we tolerated it. We allowed it. The things we reward, right? How do we reward our employees? Is it just numbers based? And a lot of it should be, trust me. We still are running a business on numbers, whether that's sales or operational metrics and KPIs. But what else are we rewarding? So for example, whenever in one of the companies I worked with that had some struggles with their culture, I would let them know every time they got a 5-star review that we can specifically tie back to an employee. We made a huge deal about it. Huge deal. It went on the internal communications platform. We created a nice image to go on all of the social medias, Meta, everything. And they would get an actual handwritten note from me and then an email from the CEO. Huge. And people would see this. People would know this. And people would know that was celebrated. So we're rewarding that customer engagement, and that went a long way. And then the other is what you repeat. Going back again to the story I said a few moments ago about my feedback on Fridays with my team on their calls, repeating those processes, repeating what's working for our teams, not repeating what's not working for our teams, right? So if your culture depends on you always just being in the building also, you want to watch out for that. You want to create, when I just said repeatable, it's things that can happen even if you're in your absence. In those times where we had those 5-star reviews, I didn't need to be there to manage that. We created an SOP, created a process, going back to the second P, and it was one that everybody had so much fun in, they wouldn't let that be missed if I wasn't in the building. So, and when we talk again about some of the processes, whether they're there or not there, what do we think about when we have the processes not there, right? Definitely not a people first environment. Imagine an employee sitting there and getting a call or an email from a client, and the boss, whether that's the CEO, the founder, the manager, whatever it may be, is the only one that has that information in their head, but they're on vacation or they're unavailable. Imagine that employee, what they're doing in that moment, that they really want to help this person, but they can't. They don't have the information, right? That's where that chaos starts to thrive. We know that when we have this chaos, that's when we start to see work having to be done again, mistakes, things taking way too long, workflows just breaking down, not knowing where to hand things off, employee turnover, people just leaving either because they're super unhappy, so they leave, or they're failing because we didn't give them what they need, so we're terminating them. Either way, not a good situation. So when we look at the people first environment, it also helps to avoid some of that chaos that we see when we don't have those. One other item that I hear from people when we talk about that, the employee first and then removing chaos, is I can't afford to invest in my leadership. If you can't afford to invest in your leadership, that's such a silly statement to me, because in my opinion, you can't afford not to. You need to make sure you have those leadership layers in place. Excuse me, that they have what they need and they have the ability to coach their teams, coach them up, and truly embrace their teams to remove the obstacles and provide the tools that they need. So what can you do this week to make sure that you are thriving in a people-first environment? You can call me, of course, but without that phone call, a few things you can do. Look at the roles in your organization and write down what your winning conditions are. What does success look like every week? What are the top 3 outcomes they're looking for? That could be sales. It could be your KPIs that you're looking at. Operations, loss prevention. Everybody has a measurable. And if they don't, you have to find one, because that's how they know what success looks like, and that's what they're driving towards, right? Another is, how often are you talking to your teams? Sometimes I hear people say, I barely talk to them. My team is amazing. They do everything that they're supposed to do. They're absolutely fantastic. Well, if you don't have the scheduled calls, I'm not saying they have to be long. They could be 10, 15 minutes, and sometimes they can be an hour if that's that teammate really needs, but they could be these short meetings. But when they're only calling you when they need something, that's the tactical reactivity. In order to be successful, we need strategic planning and tactical reactivity. We need a combination of both. So having those simple coaching cadences where you have your 10, 15 minutes just to talk, I used to call that my team's time. So if I was meeting with Bob, hey, Bob, this is your 15 minutes. What would you like to talk about? And usually they'd bring up their metrics and numbers on their own. But it was an opportunity for them to tell me what they needed and an opportunity for me to coach with them. So I suggest doing that, even if it's 10, 15 minutes, just a check-in. Could be over Zoom if you're remote, could be in person. When I used to have my one-on-ones with my teams, I would go for a walk outside with them. Just let's stretch our legs a little bit and go. Whatever it is, whatever works for you in your environment, I suggest making sure you have that picked. And then the last is figure out the biggest drain of, that's only the 6th of this month. What was your biggest drain last month? What's the biggest issue you had, the biggest time waster, energy drainer, energy vampire that you had in your business, and plan on that this month. Plan on how to work on that this month. I'm not saying to write a 40, 50-page document on it. I'm just saying whatever was your biggest drain last month, that's what you should be working on with your team this month. A quick checklist, a one-pager, whatever it is, just to make sure that your team understands that you're working on it, and you are working on it. You're trying to figure out what was the biggest energy waste of that last month. And when you do that, that's when your team will understand that you're truly people first, looking out for them. And from a business perspective, obviously you're removing a big obstacle. All right. So that is what we have for today on people first leadership. Hopefully that cleared it up. People first does not mean company last. It just means that we understand people are what build the company. People are what's going to drive it forward. Make sure that we give them all the tools they need to be successful, remove all the obstacles, give consistent and constant feedback, and listen. Just listen to them, right? So next week on the 13th, we are still going to be on our People and Leadership series. We are going to be talking about performance improvement planning, another hot button for a lot of folks that think performance improvement planning just means writing people up. That's not it. None of us are in business to write people up. We're there to move them up or move them out. So next week, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But for today, finish your tea, even if it's not Woodard of Chelsea. Take a deep breath and go lead with intention today. Thanks so much, everyone.